I really do like the energy in here. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome, all of you. Welcome to SSUC. Welcome to Spiritual Seekers United in Community. That is who we are. Welcome to those of you in this circle, enjoying each other's company and connection, and welcome to those of you joining us online as well. We're all one community, whether we're here or connected digitally and wanting to be part. We know that all are welcome here, whether we're quiet or noisy, whether we can sit or we need to run around, whether we've been here once or many times. We're all welcome, all ages, all sizes, all colors, all gender expressions, all sexualities, all religions or none or many, all types, all people, all abilities, everyone, period. And we welcome you. May we all find a hint of connection, a sense of belonging, a small piece of wisdom that you might take into your living and into your week. On this day in our tradition, we honor the story that begins a retelling of the last week of Jesus of Nazareth's life. It begins with the story of a parade, a story of protest and resistance. And within that story, often called the Palm Sunday story, a crowd used whatever they had in order to make a statement. In their case, palm branches they waved during a parade. In our case, branches of fir and spruce. Because what tree it is doesn't matter. Today's a reminder that in the journey from who we are to who we want to be, there are moments, everyday moments, of confrontation. Confrontation with ourselves, with our challenges and barriers, and with every community's need to stand in opposition to corrupting power and oppressive forces in life. So, in the spirit of that story, which we'll share a little bit later, we light our candle. We remember that each of us is a light. We all shine in our own unique way, and whoever we are, whatever resources we have to bring ourselves to the challenges and joys of living, we are enough. And may this candle be for us a light that reminds us of our own light, born to shine and bright enough to meet the challenges of today. So may we be for a time fully present and fully here for each other, for ourselves, and for the world. Let's sing our way into community.
Good morning. My name is Jan, and I'm your gathering companion for today. At SSUC, whenever we gather, we take pride in acknowledging who we are together and share gratitude for this place and our connection to where we meet. We recognize this land as Indigenous Treaty 6 territory, and we honor the many First Nations Métis and all who call this land their ancestral and adopted home. We express not only our gratitude, but our commitments to living and acting in ways that bring peace, reconciliation, to compassion and to relationships, Indigenous and non-Indigenous alike. Let us open ourselves in ways we'll commit to our intentions with words that will help us focus in this gathering and in the days ahead. Let's speak these words together to strengthen our intentions. We gather in gratitude for the gift of life, the mystery of consciousness, and our inclination toward purpose. In a world where violence shakes our peace, obstinance inhibits mutuality, and overt individualism diminishes community, we gather to seek strength in confronting our world with our spirited living. May we strengthen our intentions to bring healing to hurt, peace to violence, beauty to harshness, and justice to all brokenness. May we find courage and grace to live according to our highest values and worthy of our common humanity. We pray as those born of light and love, that it might be so.
Time for all ages means you're welcome on the carpet. Can you find that?
Isn't it underneath?
Welcome, everyone. I want to talk to you. Whoop. That tree stump is not right under my bum. It's the cord. Aha. Thank you. Better. I want to talk to you about being healthy. When we think of being healthy, what are some of the first things you think about?
Eating not eating like, oh, cookies, I could eat these all day and still be fine. Oh,
Okay.
So good. Like eating like broccoli every now and once.
Okay.
Like eating like cookies like once or twice a week.
Yes, okay. So
Put in your junk food.
some kind of balance in your eating, in your diet. Okay, okay, okay. What else do you think about when you think about being healthy? Smiling. What else? Yes?
Not eating cookies.
Not eating cookies. Health has a lot to do with cookies, maybe. Okay,
It's those annoying cookies, aren't they?
there are a lot of ways we can think about health, and some of them are about our bodies. That's the kind of the number one thing we think about. We think about our bodies. We think about staying healthy with what we eat, or exercising, or even the way we feel sick or well, you know, that kind of health. But today, I want to talk to you about another kind of health. And it's just as important, not just about muscles and eating, but also healthy minds and healthy thoughts. These are also ways to be healthy. And one of the first things that we need to talk about when we talk about healthy minds and healthy thoughts is we have to talk about what we feel. Talking about what we feel can be difficult because sometimes it takes practice to know what we feel. It's not automatic. Some people think, I'm happy, I'll say I'm happy. For others, it's more difficult. It takes practice to know just what's going on inside of me, inside of my emotions, in my heart, in my mind, in my thoughts. What am I thinking? So one of the ways that we do this is by knowing what we're feeling, and then there's a next step, which we'll talk about too. So I brought with me a poster today. It's our feeling poster. All I want to do is ask you, and there's lots of feelings on here, and if you can't read, then you can see faces, right? You can look at those faces and see that there's lots of people that are feeling lots of different ways on this poster. And none of them are good, and none of them are bad. They're all just different feelings, and we all feel them at different times. Does anybody see anything on here about the way they're feeling right now? What are you feeling right now? What do you see?
Well, I'm feeling two feelings.
Two feelings, that's good.
Sad and happy.
Sad and happy. A little bit of this and a little bit of that? Yeah, okay. Anyone else? Anyone else recognize something about what they've feel? Maybe not even right now, but recently that they've felt? Yes. Oh, Tyler, just a second. One first, okay?
I had noticed that they're not descriptive of feelings, so I don't have a feeling on that board.
Okay.
They're just not very descriptive, and I wanted to point that out.
That is fine. That this poster may not have the feelings you're feeling, or they might describe it differently. Tyler, you wanted to say something.
Okay, so let me tell you something.
Okay, good.
I'm feeling really happy, but sometimes I get sad and sometimes, that's not my only two emotions.
Sometimes happy, sometimes sad, but those are not your only two emotions. That's right. Excellent. What do you have to say to us today?
I'm brave.
You're brave. And that is amazing. And you know what? Brave or courageous is not even on this poster. There's so many things not on this poster. This is just a starting place. It's a very good one.
What's on the other side?
Nothing. We should make more pictures on the other side of all the things that aren't there. Okay, so I'm just going to stop with that just for now, because I want to say that when we can say what we're feeling, the other thing about being healthy is not keeping it only to ourselves. Some feelings are for ourselves, but if all of our feelings were only kept to ourselves, we would feel very alone in our feelings. So some of our feelings, we want to have someone we love or someone we trust to share that with. If we're feeling sad, we would love to have someone to tell, I'm feeling sad. Because when we do that, we are able to express what's inside of us and make it a little bit less difficult to deal with. No one should have to deal with all of our emotions all by ourselves. So, We will get more and more healthy as we get better and better at identifying what's going on in us, and then better and better at sharing those feelings with each other. And that's just one way that we get more and more healthy in our thoughts and in our feelings. So, having said that, it doesn't matter what you're feeling, it is okay. And I want to invite you to Kids Spirit today. Kids Spirit, Ariane and Daisy are ready and have an exciting lesson for you today in Kids Spirit. And if you'd like to join them, you're welcome. And if you would like to stay in this room, you can also do that. You are invited. This is a time for sharing some invitations, and if any of you have anything to share with the community, you're welcome to come and await the microphone. And as we do that, I'll just share a few quick ones with you. Today is a day that we can reaffirm our commitment to being an intentionally affirming community, and we do that in many, many ways, but one of the ways that we're doing that today is by having a little conversation and a little energy sharing around ideas and the future of what it means to be affirming in this SSUC community. So that's happening today, and you're welcome to stay for that conversation. We're going to have coffee after, as always. You're welcome to grab coffee. Just share, experience that for a few minutes while we set some things up. And we're going to have some pie available and a little conversation circle right here in this corner of the room. So if you're staying, have some coffee, then stay for some pie and conversation. And if you're not staying, of course, you're still welcome to stay for coffee, but no pie for you. Yes. Do you want to come?
For the people who are in the reconciliation response group, Ruth Stevenson has Jody Wilson-Raybould's second book called True Reconciliation. We're passing this around to members of the group. If you want to read that book, Ruth has it here today, and she's in the nursery.
You're welcome. This coming Wednesday is also a chance to gather for a little adult education opportunity, time to gather and learn and talk about what it means to see Easter through an expansive spirituality lens. What can Easter mean to us on an expansive path? So if that's something that interests you, Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Also, we will have a Zoom component if you're at home. If you're out of town, you're welcome to join us, and the link is in Friday's Messenger. And then, as if that's not enough, just 2 days later is our Good Friday gathering. We'll meet here in this space on Good Friday evening, 7 p.m. Quiet, meditative time to focus on the events of Good Friday, the story of Good Friday, and how we might engage that and and honor that day. And then that's followed by next Sunday, which is Easter. A gathering at 10 a.m., just like always, but we'll gather with song, with celebration, and focus on what it means to celebrate hope and renewed living on Easter Sunday. Nothing else to share? Nothing else to say? Excellent. Let's continue with our gathering and our singing. For the turning of the world. Let us sing this song for the turning of the world, that we may turn as one. With every voice, with every song, we will move this world along, and our hearts will feel the echo of our turning. With every voice, with every song, we will move this world along. With every voice, with every song, we will move this world along, and our hearts will feel the echoes of our turning.
This is a reading from the book of Mark, chapter 19. Jesus headed straight up to Jerusalem. When he had come near Bethphage and Bethany, at the place called the Mount of Olives, he sent two of the disciples with instructions. Go to the village across from you. As soon as you enter, find a colt there and bring it. They brought the colt to Jesus. Then, throwing their coats on its back, they helped Jesus get on. As he rode, the people gave him a grand welcome, throwing their coats on the street. Right at the crest, where Mount Olives begins its descent, the whole crowd of disciples burst into enthusiastic praise. Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes. Peace and glory in the highest. Some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to him, Teacher, order your disciples to stop. He answered, I tell you, if these were silent, the stones would shout out. These are words from the Christian tradition passed down from the first century. May we find wisdom for our living.
So the story and history of our tradition calls this day Palm Sunday. And I would say, like Christmas and Easter, there's ritual and there's tradition that pulls strongly to the story of this day. Having said that, what we do with this story, like what we do with any ancient wisdom story, as those walking an expansive spiritual path, makes all the difference. As with any wisdom we share, our primary concern is how do we mine this story, not for a historical telling, but for spiritual meaning in our life right now. To deepen and broaden how we might live according to the values we wish to pursue. That is always our goal. So as the story goes, Jesus is compelled to go to Jerusalem during the Passover festival. If there's a festival in Jerusalem for the Jewish people that's the one to take a pilgrimage to Jerusalem for, it's Passover. So we've got people coming from miles and miles, converging on the city to be at or near the temple for this festival. And Jesus was a teacher, a rabbi, and so it was customary for him to be like all those others in the crowd and do that. And what made this trip different, though, was that he had made somewhat of a name for himself. He was on what we would today perhaps call a watch list. He'd been heard teaching such outrageous things that, like, people should be able to have a spiritual life of their own. And access to the practices and rituals of that tradition themselves. Not rely on the priests of the tradition and the temple to control their access and to judge them worthy or not. So he was teaching about these radical ideas, about access to whatever it is that they would see as the holy. The radical ideas of resisting the political occupation of the Roman Empire, which was all around them. Maintaining that there are realms of life and living that cannot be controlled. An occupying force like Rome doesn't like hearing such things, that there are parts of our lives that will not and cannot be subjugated. He was teaching a radical inclusiveness that would erase barriers of gender and nationality, of tribe and religion. All of these threats to the establishment order that would use those very clear separations as a means of control and domination. So, despite every caution to stay away from Jerusalem, the center of all that would silence him, he goes. And the way he does it gives us, in part, a framework for how he and us can begin to think about and consider toppling every system of domination. He does it by defining what it means to be a resistor. So, I want to stay with the story for a minute here. Let's talk about this occupying force. Making a display of their power, any occupying force, in their making a display of their power will help keep people exactly where they want them. Quiet, contained in line. So especially during local festivities like Passover, a military procession and a parade would do that kind of work of underscoring the might of their power over people. We don't have to look far in the world to still see this happening, right? A military parade is a display of power. It's a display to say, mind your place. Commanders would have been on horses. Soldiers would have been in ranks, marching through areas, especially where there might be unrest or turmoil, where there might be a risk of trouble or rebellion. And in case that's not enough, well, there's always the possibility of making an example of someone. This does wonders for an occupying force. If someone doesn't respect the occupier, well, public dressing downs, shamings, beatings, or worse, whatever it takes to keep the fear of the empire's power in the tops of the public's mind. This is the business of the domination system. But here's the thing, and it's something that this first century peasant leader knew without a doubt. If this domination is resisted with violence, it will only be met with more violence. Violence backed by seemingly limitless resources of weapons, torture, death. And I'm sure they'd seen it play out before their very eyes. And it's into this context that Jesus organizes a parade of his own. Now, this parade isn't a show of power. It's not meant to be a guerrilla group wanting a coup, wanting to fight the occupying force in combat. This parade is meant to be pure theater. Think rather than soldiers marching in ranks, think more of something that you would watch on Stephen Colbert, or This Hour Has 22 Minutes. This is farce. It's meant to elicit a different response. So instead of a mighty steed for the leader in the parade that was happening elsewhere, well, this one, how about a young donkey that barely raises their leader higher than if he were to be standing up? It looks ridiculous. That's the point. Where are the weapons of any protester's army? There isn't a sword, a knife, or a spear in sight. Instead, they have tree branches. Pathetic. That's the point. It's interesting, isn't it, the relationship we have with violence? It's such a part of our world and our socialization and our entertainment and our very instinct that equate that there are only two ways to confront it. We either meet violence with violence or with a meekness that can seem akin to cowardice, running the other way or staying silent, not raising a fuss. Here in this parade, though, is the first step toward finding a third way. And this first step is the act of showing just how ridiculous the system that allows for the violence really is. Fight it with straightforward violence, and an uprising is over before it's even begun. Soldiers swoop in. Trials, they take too long. Kill now, ask questions later. And then likewise, speak to it with speeches on the steps of the governor or the temple. Write out the placards, hold them up, march around. Those very words, those very signs are your conviction notice. Soldiers swoop in, arrests are made, the end. But in this middle way, Speak in ways that mean something to your audience, the ones who are beaten down and worn out. Speak to them in subversive symbol and ambiguous metaphor. And then you've got the seeds of resistance. Here's a parade whose grand marshal has been teaching peace, advocating change, teaching all these things that are threatening to the control and status of those in the halls of power, and now put him on a donkey and illustrate that the weapons of the Romans are irrelevant. Palm branches, big deal, right? Except those palm branches are everywhere. And they're living, they're alive, they grow, they're flexible, like a mass of people desperate for change. And this parade doesn't just stay quietly on the outskirts. It marches right into the heart of the city. It's not violence, and it's anything but cowardice. It's entering right into the heart of the battle, and they do it not with scowls and chants, but they do it laughing, shouting in celebration, making fun of the powers who watch right under their noses without realizing what they're watching. They march and they disarm their opponents with their farce. We're living in a world right now where almost half of children in our school systems struggle with mental health and struggle with either in-person bullying or cyberbullying or some kind of negative behavior and critical behavior. If a child is bullied at school, for instance, part of us, and we have to recognize that part in us, so much wants that child to stand up for themselves. Fight back. But another part of us wants to find a non-violent solution. And we have to wrestle with how we deal with this violence. The violent tendencies, the violent thoughts, but also this binary world that we either stand up and fight the bully or we're a coward and we do nothing. These are not the only two choices. We're torn because we so often think that nonviolence simply encourages living with the problem, submission rather than creating an alternative. And this is where this story and this kind of line of thinking is very helpful to us. And I'm not saying that this is the only answer, but I want to tell you a story of Michael. Michael was being bullied on his school bus. He was too small to fight the sturdier bully and wasn't a fighter, nor should he have been. But he had a weakness that he made into a strength. And what his weakness was: chronic sinusitis. So one day, fed up with the bully's behavior, he noisily blew a load of snot into his right hand. And he approached his nemesis on the bus, hand outstretched, and he said, "I want to shake the hand of a real bully." Now, let's get this straight. There's extreme risk in Michael doing this. Confronting our challenges and our occupiers and our oppressors is never risk-free, regardless of how we do it. This bigger boy, Michael said, went quickly to sit down in his seat on the bus, wide-eyed. And because the whole bus had been watching, it was the end, at least in Michael's experience, of this small-time bully's career. Nonviolence shouldn't be misconstrued as a way to avoid conflict. I don't know that it ever is. The peace that Jesus was teaching, is never just the absence of conflict. The peace that Jesus was teaching brought loads of conflict. But we should never confuse an absence of violence for peace. Sometimes it's just simmering tension. Sometimes it's maybe just the calm before another storm. Often real confrontation of power through nonviolence brings about conflict, elicits conflict, in order to bring it out into the open and lance its poisonous sores. Rather than let it creep around hidden in the shadows, which is where violence, which is where occupation always thrives. Nonviolence doesn't coddle or cajole aggressors, but it moves against perceived injustice proactively. So this conversation all begins with a ridiculous parade, but it doesn't stay that way. It doesn't stay with a ridiculous parade. The wisdom of this day is in our attitude toward the powers that dominate us. Be they political, social, personal, relational, we all have powers in our lives that are dominating us. We all come up against places where we're subjected to things. People, ideas, substances, attitudes, habits that have a hold over us. The wisdom of this day says to us that any of those systems or oppressors can be defied. They can be. But more often than not, they will not be defied on their own terms. We will not meet violence with violence, or oppression with other kinds of oppression, or substituting one addiction for another. We cannot fight the oppressors in our living on their terms. This day reminds us to keep finding a new way, a middle way, a way that's neither passive nor violent, neither all-consuming or risk-free. Because there will be a cost. Believe there will be a cost. The stories that walk us to Good Friday recognize that. Our own experience tells us that there's a cost to confronting the Goliaths and the occupied forces of our lives. So it becomes our task to consider where we ourselves are burdened by the shackles of oppression and how we might stand up, begin the hard work of freedom, finding creative ways. And commit ourselves to the work of those who need us to stand up with them, because we're not alone. We don't have to deal with our complex emotions by ourselves. And when we do, we're challenged. We also don't have to work on the occupations and forces of burden in our lives by ourselves. and it's going to tire us out, and it'll draw attention to the weaknesses in ourselves and each other. It just will. We might even be disappointed once, twice, 3 times, 4 times as we try it, until we find a way that works. Audre Lorde said these words, that revolution is not a one-time event. I appreciate that, because revolution is constant. Our becoming, our growth, our resistance, our freedom, our placing love at the center of our living, we can't just do that once and be done. We're doing that always. It requires our strength, and it requires we help each other to achieve it. So in this difficult story, couched in comedy and farce, it's the difficult story of all of our lives, the challenges we face and the work that is before us to confront them. May we be creative in whatever stand we'll make in the turning of our lives, so that the world will always feel its echo. We're going to participate this morning in a ritual around this table. And as we prepare to do so with some words that will help us enter into this time, I want to invite you to participate in the words with me. On the screen, you will see two phrases. As I say the words each time, as life confronts us, I'll ask you to respond with the phrase, we respond with hope. In the sacred space that we call life, we come face to face with life around us, within us and between us. Not just idealized and glorified life, but life in all of its reality. Its disappointments, its hopes, its messiness, confusion, and clarity. Its failures and successes. And so as life confronts us, we respond with hope. We invite into our present the truth of the past and the mystery of our futures, recognizing where we've met circumstances with truth and find ourselves in moments of choice. To tear down or build up. To go it alone or together. To embrace a new direction or stay the course. To be surrounded by negative voices or positive influence. To react with bitterness or encouragement. As life confronts us, we respond with hope. And so we celebrate how this community and these people might leave us changed. Having a safe place to question, to dialogue. Having new ways of framing our experiences. Having the motivating energy of coming face to face with the world as it is. Recognizing the joy of being present to each other in our common quest for living out our spiritual lives with honesty and integrity. So as life confronts us, we respond with hope. Sharing food around this table has long been a sign and symbol of friendship, community, and connection. This table or any table. Whether it around a fire to tell stories or an important meeting between future allies, to lend strength to each other or to bond as families, both of birth and of choice. We share bread in celebration of the earth's gifts. All that gives us life to strengthen our compassion, to solidify our sense of justice, to empower our work. And we celebrate with the fruits of the earth and all that satisfies our thirst for transformation, that inspires us to embrace our challenges, find inspiration to make changes that bring about our truest humanity. And so we share fruit as a symbol that we can meet life with the strength we need to plant and to grow more love, more peace, more hope. This table is an invitation to meet together, to consider in a new way, to come to each other with common questions and common needs, to come alongside one another ready to change and be changed by the experiences of living. This is an ancient ritual. But we hope that we might find new meaning and new purpose in the symbols and act of sharing food, because it is always in need of bringing ourselves to it. We're all invited. We don't need to be a member of this church or any church to participate in sharing this food. This ritual doesn't bind you or commit you to anything other than what meaning and commitment you make to yourself. You may come to receive a piece of bread and some grapes, or you may participate in your own way in your seat. But know this, we're all invited. Regardless of where we are, where we've been, where we're going, regardless of who we are and how we identify, this is a ritual of belonging. So know that you belong to life and to each other. We're all invited to share this food for the journey that it may strengthen us. So as life confronts us, we respond with hope. Friends, may you go into this week with your light shining bright, with our sense of community strong, and with our strength to resist empowered and inspired. May we go in peace. Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.